I'm going to try to do a quick video tutorial going through the basic process of this homework assignment, the nature scene. We want to have a flock of birds or other animals. We want the wings flapping or the basic motion of the animal, maybe running, maybe hopping, if you want to go that route, to be done within the graphic symbol. And then on the stage itself, outside of the symbol, you actually move that symbol with a motion tween. And so we do that for multiple instances of the motion tween, and thereby creating different individual birds or animals moving maybe together, maybe separately, but on their own kind of specific trajectories. I'll quickly go through the process. I expect you, to put some care and some time into this. I'm probably just going to breeze through the different kind of bits of work here. Well, there's my email. First up, I'll just look up a bird in flight, and it can really be any, any kind of bird, whatever. Wow, some great examples. So I'll just get this guy, the seagull type of creature. Oh, look at that dude. Okay. It's not a pelican, that's a heron. Oh, I don't know. Save as. You can just you can just draw from imagination if you want, but if you're not a super confident drawer, you can import things to the stage. You can even import video to rotoscope over or to trace over. Now remember, when you import things, you can import either directly to the stage or to the library. Once again, the library is an important place where you can get all of your assets, either symbols that you've already created. You can pull them in whenever you want, or any external bitmap type images. So here's my bird in flight. The library is usually nested here with your properties panel. So here's my bird in flight. Once again, working with images, you can scale them with your guy here. Now, one thing that was asked in class, which I in all fairness, I should mention if you haven't noticed it so far, you can literally or automatically trace bitmap images into vector. The problem here, although you can kind of change your settings to make things simple, the problem here is when you're animating, it makes for an image that is not all that workable. I mean, you can do it, but I think it's actually just it's a kind of rigid way to work with images. I much prefer, and I think it'll make for less work and a more satisfying result, actually just tracing the essence of the thing by hand. Because you can actually work, it's something that, an image that you can work with. You can, if you draw it in a simple way with the simple drawing tools, like your circles and your rectangles and stuff like that, then you can modify things with shape tweens and that kind of thing. It's way more efficiently. Or of course, if you want a more sandboxy or like tactile approach, you can use like the brush tool or whatever. I'm going to do a quick trace. Maybe let's see, maybe I'll sample. You can sample remember you can sample your color from the underlying image. I'll trace this bird, including the feet. I'm not going to waste your time by doing a good job on this, but you get my drift. Now, what I like to do, just do your trace. Don't worry about how the thing's gonna actually animate right off the bat. We'll worry about that kind of thing later. I'm gonna do a crazy, scary eyeball. Because birds can be scary at times. And then for this guy, I'm going to put a little bit of a sinister. Okay, stop. Get on with it, Brian. Maybe it's hard to resist. Maybe I'll do some some little suggestions of the feathers at least. Give the guy a sense of structure. And then he has little feathers underneath. Anyway, that's my thing. And so what I like to do is then just when you're done making your drawing, just disappear that bitmap. I can keep it in the in a hidden layer for now. When you're done making your original drawing, you can select the whole frame by just clicking on the frame in the timeline, or obviously by with your select tool just dragging to select the whole thing. Right click, convert to symbol. Remember to convert it to a graphic symbol and name it so you can keep your stuff organized. Name it and graphic symbol. Graphic symbol will allow any animation we do within the symbol to play on the main timeline. Movie clip symbols we'll talk about a little bit next week, but they allow more options, more complexity in a way, but an animation within won't play on the timeline only when you export it. It'll function properly, but not when you're just like previewing it. Button is more for interactivity, which we're not going to deal with in this class at all, unfortunately, for better or for worse. Now, did you see what I just did? You double click on the symbol. You can see the symbol. This symbol is ready to be motion tweened, or other kind of changes can be made. But to get inside and to actually either edit the underlying color and drawing and everything, as simple as that, you can do that. And then when you back out, it's like that. So, and here's something. You'll notice that the bird has appeared on my library over here. And once again, I can just drag infinite copies of that bird. And one thing that I mentioned in class, if you weren't here, if I click in and edit one instance of the bird, all instances of that bird change. So just be aware of that happening. Also, another thing, if you double click on the bird that's already placed on the stage, you'll be able to see it with other elements grayed out. You can see it in a contextual light, which is much preferable to, you want to see it in its context so you can see how your changes will apply to it on the main stage. If you double click on it, you can also change it by double clicking in the library, but if you do it that way, you're just going to see it in this like empty space, isolated from the surroundings on the stage. So I don't find that to be as helpful, but it doesn't change anything about how you can edit it. So what I want to do, I double click into it once again, and then I can animate on this new timeline. You'll see that my timeline, scene 1 timeline, you see I have 2 layers here. When I click in, I have a new timeline that exists only within this symbol. I can do whatever I want, add new layers, I can add motion tweens and shape tweens and do anything that I do in the main timeline within this. I'm going to say that my wing flapping cycle will maybe be 24 frames, which is a second. I'll have them flap up and down within that second. So the easiest way to do this, I think, is to select the part I want to separate out. I like to make sound effects for when I do anything for some reason. Okay, I'm going to select just the wing, and I'm just going to cut that out, and then I'm going to click on the layer above and just paste it. And notice you can actually paste in place. Not bad, not too shabby. And in the meantime, I think I just want to fill in the rest of this dude's body so that when I flap my wing, I'm not gonna, if I show any of his body through, I mean, this is awful, obviously, but not what you want in an ideal world, but not horrible. And I'm also gonna hide this other wing. Instead of animating 2 wings separately, I'm just gonna animate 1 wing, and then I'm gonna copy and paste it. So 2 ways I can do this. One way, I'm actually going to make a duplicate layer of this so I can show you the 2 ways I might approach this duplicate layer. Most people in class decided that they wanted to animate this by turning the wing into a motion tween of its own, meaning that it's going to create this wing into another symbol. it says it can't be tweened. You have to turn it into another symbol, and you can see that the wing itself appears on in the library. And I wasn't careful when I turned this into a symbol. It actually turned it into the wrong kind of symbol, the movie clip. But that gives me an opportunity to show you that whenever you have a symbol, you can always change it between the different kinds of symbols. It doesn't matter. You just click on the symbol, and in the properties, it shows you what kind of symbol it is. No big deal. So what I can do here, I now have a motion tween, and what I'll do is I want it to flap, but I want that motion to be anchored at where the wing attaches to the body, obviously. So I want it to end in the same position that it begins, because I want it to be a perfect looping cycle. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the final frame here, and I'll just move it a little bit and move it back into place. And that automatically creates a keyframe here. So it begins and ends, mostly in the same position. And if I wanted to do any adjustments, I'll just make sure they're in the same spot. Well, it might move a little bit, no problem. So now I have my hinge in the right place, and for the middle point, I'll just have him flap. Maybe he doesn't go all the way like that. I think I'll just have him flap like this. I think it's a little bit more realistic. Oh, now I guess then, well, my final position should have stayed in place. Sometimes when you're doing a scale or something like that, it doesn't know that you want it, it kind of undoes your later keyframe, and you'll find you have to put in the proper keyframe once again. But one thing I can do, I can go to the earlier keyframe, copy properties, and then I can go back here and then paste properties. There we go. I have my full looped cycle. That's one thing about motion tweens. They sometimes separate the different kinds of manipulations you can make. Like scaling is a separate kind of concept than position. So sometimes you'll just have to figure it out. And what I could do, I could add some easing here. Like maybe it goes fast and then it slows down. So right near the end, I'll put it much closer to the top of the arc of the flap. So it's a little nothing fancy, but we'll let's see. Maybe we'll do another one. Oh, wait, this is the top of the one. Yeah, that's what I want to do. That's where I wanted to do the change of position. Okay, what does this look like? If I want to loop this, I can just turn that looping on. Whoops. And when I turn the looping on, I have these handlebars to drag to tell it how much I want it to loop. No, I didn't want this keyframe. I meant to put my keyframe and my easing was what I'm doing there at the top of the flap. So I want the easing at the top of the flap to slow down a bit. Not great. Ah, okay. Stop doing this, Brian. Whatever. I can play with that all day. For our purposes, I'll just let that be. That's one way I could do it, just with a simple motion tween of the wing. Another way I can just do it frame by frame if you want. That can be a great bit of fun. Just let yourself, you have the wing layer separated onto a new layer, and then you can just add, You just convert to frame and move or modify the layer, or you can just draw what I like to do is just draw the new frame. Just do a straight ahead animation. It's no, and I can either fill it in now or fill it in later. I can choose how many keyframes I want to make. It's not going to be obviously as smooth, but you might get some nice surprises out of this. Oh yeah, but I'm not going to make it all the way to the bottom of my flap by the end of this. I'm just going to make it. So now let's see what I have. That looks pretty good. And let's give him a little bit of a pause, and then we'll just really shoot him back down. I actually have these. I have some of my keys programmed into the buttons on my Wacom tablet. Like create blank keyframe is programmed into the buttons on my Wacom tablet, which is pretty handy. I also have advance and go back a frame programmed in. You should be able to do that even in the classroom Wacoms, and if you remind me, we can explore that in class someday. So that works pretty well too. You be the judge about how you want to approach these kind of motions. Which is better, that one, number one, or number two? Oops. Turn this one off. Number one. That looks a little bit better actually, the automated version. So let it be up to you. And to do the back wing, here's an easy way to do it. Duplicate your layer, and then actually remember, the stacking order of your layers in the timeline actually signifies the stacking order on the stage. So right now they're totally overlapping one another. I'm just gonna, if I move, I'm gonna block everything else I'm not working on. Oh, my foot's asleep too. Okay, if I use the free transform to move this, maybe it won't work when I need to move the entire motion. I could move the entire motion path. Doesn't matter. One thing I can do, I might just like edge the back wing a little bit forward. I'm also going to change the color of the back wing. Let's see. Come on. Color effect. Let's change the brightness. We'll make it a little darker, right? Whoops. I changed it a place where I don't want it to be. Sometimes you don't notice where you're actually modifying one of the properties of your tween, like which frame you're on, and then you have to remind yourself to pay attention to where you are making your edit. Well, that's pretty easy. I think I need to move it forward in each of these keyframes, or else it'll retreat back to the original position. This should work. If you're doing a lot of change of position with your motion tween, it's pretty easy that you can move the whole path of that motion with the free transform tool by dragging that little Bezier arc that's been created, and that'll move the entire motion. To deal with that is a little too similar. If I want to just like shrink it ink a little bit, that might help. Again, go on frame one. move him a little further ahead. And I'll do the same thing for my final frame. There's another thing where you can edit multiple frames at a time. And for me, I start to get dizzy when I do that. But feel free to try it. I mean, that looks pretty good. I don't know if that should be maybe like a skew or something. Anyway, we have 2 wings. You be the judge about how that's going to work. Pretty good. 2 wings are there. We're back to the scene. You have your bird in flight. You can shrink him down on the stage if you want. And you can see it's not going to play through. I'll get rid of the second guy for now. Even if you, let me save this, kind of like this bird test. Even if you tested this film right now, you're not going to see any movement. And remember, you have to set it so that hidden layers don't show up on Final Export. The reason why this isn't playing is because you haven't established more than 1 frame as existing on your main timeline. And so your graphic animation doesn't have any room, doesn't have any time to actually play. So I'm just going to insert a frame here on my timeline. This should, I have it on loop. Turn off the loop. This should play really nicely now. Oh yeah, that's right. Hidden layers play. So let's get rid of my hidden layer. Now what? Now how will it look? There we go. Great. And so it plays, it loops seamlessly, or it loops until the final frame as it's defined on the layer that holds the bird symbol. And that's great. So now what we can do is actually create a motion tween out of this dude, and we can just send him from one side of the screen in frame 1 to the other side of the screen in frame 100. And what's the problem with this? Straight movement does not look natural. It looks very mechanical, although the flapping basically works. But in order to create a more realistic movement, we want to add at least a little bit of an arc. And even that, if you can tell, I don't know, maybe you agree, maybe you don't. Even that to me looks better. What I want to do, is create like little bumps. You can create a more complex movement, of course. What I kind of like to do is actually make the flapping of the wings seem to suggest a little bit of an uplift. So let's see, as his wings flap down, that pushes him up a little bit. I'm just going to define a frame here, and when he pushes up, it's going to have him kind of lift up a bit. And then as his wings go back up, he doesn't have as much lift anymore, so he'll just kind of settle back down until he makes another push. Well, it's a little sharp. I don't know if it means to be that sharp, right? Who knows? We'll see. Not liking that too much. I think we might need to reduce the extremity of that. So I'm just going to clear my keyframes. I selected multiple keyframes, clear keyframes all, and let's do. He moves there, and then maybe by here he's just like a little up. And I'm actually using the arrow key is just to do like minor modifications. Then using the period key to move forward frames, and then he flaps up there, and then he's gonna like kind of lift up in this one. Anyway, I can work on this. Okay. We're starting to get somewhere, and then he flaps again there. So then I'll put him at the top of an arc here. Only problem is my curve here is a little too sharp, I think. Sometimes sharp bends occur in the Bezier curve, which I feel like I'm not asking for. So let's see it without the Bezier. The idea here is, I mean, any curve to your movement is, or any arc to your movement is, helps to improve the sense of realism here. I don't know if that little bounce is all that effective, and this bird probably rides convection currents a whole lot more than just flapping around everywhere. But the idea is that movement of a living thing should move in a kind of arced path. A straight movement is almost, is very difficult and belies the kind of naturalism. I mean, we're a series of more often than not ball joints or, joints that move in kind of arced paths. There are some joints that move straight, but as a kind of constellation of different kind of joints moving in collaboration, the paths of our motions tend to be arced. I mean, especially with a flight path, it's always going to be arced, much like the bouncing ball. So whether the flight path in total is arced, or you even want to try to suggest the kind of counterbalance of weight and the kind of additional thrust of the wings as they flap, that's up to you. One thing that I also did, so one thing you can do is just simply give yourself a little bit of a path here. You can have them come back in. You can really do anything you want with this path. You can move things around. I find it much easier just to go to the position where you want the bird to be in a different location and just move them there. And then you can kind of like adjust the path accordingly a little bit. If you have these sharp edges, corners that occur in the path that are hard to just drag around, you can actually use the direct selection tool here. And by clicking on those points, you can actually edit only the sort of white points that occur as Bezier curves. You can see that I'm kind of grabbing those points and moving them, moving the handlebars. And see here, if you grab the whole path, you can change the whole path of motion, as I was alluding to earlier. Anyway, this is something you can play with and get frustrated by, but at any point, if it gets too screwed up as mine currently is, you can either just like erase your keyframes, or just final option, delete the motion in general. One last thing I would want to do to the bird. This is taking longer than I expected, but one thing I could do is actually adjust the body of the bird to suggest the kind of displacement of weight. And I would just probably do this by let's see, flap. So when he flaps, he's going to be, it's like his arms are going down. He's pushing his back up. His back's going up, and his head's kind of dragging down by comparison. How do I do that? How do I suggest that really easily? Well, what if let me first add another keyframe later. I'm going to add another keyframe here when his wings are up. And this is not going to be an empty keyframe, but a full keyframe. I'm going to actually unlock that layer, select everything on my layer, and I'm going to do a simple thing here. Just a free transform, but using one of these distort options, I'm actually going to just, his back should be arching up a little bit, his beak and his head going down. I'm going to just make a couple more of these layers. I'm going to drag this guy. He's going to be normal here. He's going to be normal here. And then here, he's going to be abnormal. Here, he's going to be... You can also do this distort, which is maybe... Is that more effective? Not really. We want the kind of like warp. This is kind of similar to Photoshop's warping in the transform tool settings. So I don't know if you're going to get anything out of this. But this is how I might want to suggest that the body is. Actually, let me copy this frame, and maybe I'll just paste it here to be done with it. Let me have that arch again. Let's see what it looks like. It's not great, but it's a little bit of a suggestion that his body is, that path is horrible. Let's just do a simple path. Get rid of my motion here, remove motion, then make it a motion tween again, and I'll just have him go to the other side. Nothing fancy. Just like I'm like a Bob Ross guy here with my happy birds. And you want to take your happy bird, you want to get him home. So a bit of an art. And you see you got a little bit of the flapping. That might be too cartoonish. You can be the judge. And what we want to do for the homework assignment is we want to have multiple birds. Oops, multiple birds in here. And if you want different motions, you have to remember to put them on new layers. I seem to always want to forget that. Here's another bird, shrink him down, give him his own motion. Create motion tween. Okay, I've already established the position in frame 1. Now I'm on final frame. I can make him go. And maybe, I want to move him later. I just move the whole frame, and look at that. Whoops, he should start probably off the, there he is. So there's 2, look at that. It's already beginning to be a flock. And they move somewhat differently. We're establishing different, let's make him have a downward, his arc trajectory is a little bit different. Look at that. We already have a flock almost established. You can also, of course, just duplicate your layer, and then change things from there. And I'll have this guy come in. Don't double click on that. Ooh, don't want to do that. Well, it's okay if you do that. Okay. This guy's coming in differently. He's going to start off in a totally different place. Let's just go. Look at that. I hate when those kinks come into my motion path without me asking for it. So whatever, here we are. We've got 3 guys. And you might want to distinguish them by maybe changing the color. Maybe this guy's behind the others, and so I can just turn up the brightness a little bit. He's fading out into the distance. I can also just scale him a bit. And if you only define these, whoops, I can also do a little bit of, that's one thing I can do too during my flight. I can, holding down shift will scale him proportionally. And I can change the kind of rotation of these guys during their flight path. Oh, his rotation is bad now. But you get the point. And then when you output, look at that. Such a variety of motions there. So simply done. I'm going to get rid of my bitmap so it doesn't appear. And then save my thing. And now we're talking about background. We'll do part 2.